welcome to a brand new episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, and if this is your first time tuning in to the podcast, I welcome you and I hope that you return for future episodes, especially after this one. And if you're a returning listener or viewer of the podcast, I hope that today's podcast is one that you will find informative, enlightening, and as always, insightful. So before we get to our main event today, just a reminder for our people in the YouTube community, please make sure you hit that red subscribe button to get future notifications on new episodes of the podcast. If you're tuning in from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe there as well. And for those who would like to help us continue to build this platform, we do accept donations through Cash App with our handle $, or Venmo with our handle at Kwame SM. And to catch up on past episodes, and we have at this point 150 plus episodes of this podcast, make sure you go to our main website at www.identitytalk4educators.com. Thank you so much for the support. Today's episode, as I've mentioned over the past few weeks, we're going to be highlighting a number of phenomenal educators and members of the AIELOC community. I told y'all the conference just left me at an emotional high, so much so that y'all got to hear these stories from these phenomenal people. Today's guest is someone who is from that community. She is somebody who was one of the first people to actually welcome me into AIELOC when I first got started a few years back, and she has grown to be a pretty good friend of mine, someone that I lean on for counsel, somebody who I watch and I can take her blueprint and apply it to the work that I try to do as an anti-bias, anti-racist educator. She is somebody who typically isn't in front of the camera that much, so this is actually a rare treat for me, selfishly, and hopefully it'll be a treat for you all when you hear her story. So without further ado, I want to bring on my good friend Rama Ndiaye to the podcast to share her story. Hey.
Wow. Hey, how you doing?
Not bad. How are you feeling today?
I mean, I'm feeling good. You do know how to make people feel special. Wow, that was quite the introduction. Thank you, Kwame.
I hope I'll be really good at this after 150 takes. I should be good at this point, right? It's a lot of practice.
I believe
But listen, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me, even though this is something that we do even off camera. So this is nothing new, just a bunch of people watching or listening from wherever they're listening to. No pressure, right? But yes, it's great to have you on. We're going to start from the beginning, which is what we like to do here. Let's talk about your early upbringing. So I know you are from Senegal. That is your home, but you've also been in other countries in your lifetime. But let's start in Senegal. So just tell me what your upbringing was like.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. Yeah, I was born in Senegal, and we actually left Senegal when I was 3 because my parents were Olympic athletes and they moved to France to actually practice. So they got some sort of scholarship to do that. So I grew up in Paris mostly. But I'm grateful that my parents every year would send me back to Senegal, so in order for me to keep up with the language. Going to Senegal every summer to see my cousins was my treat. If I worked well at school, then I got to go to Senegal. So it's pretty incredible to be able to say that.
Wow, I didn't realize your parents were Olympic athletes. What events did they participate in?
Track and field. Actually, my mother was 4-time African champion. She actually has a Wikipedia page and everything. She's pretty well known in Senegal. Most people don't know that about me.
Okay, well, this is my first time, man. I've known you for what, about 3 years? This is my first time hearing of this. Right. Small flex.
Yeah, we're a family of athletes. Yeah. This is really nice.
That's what's up. But tell me, what got you into education? What inspired you to want to do this job that we exert so much energy doing?
Yeah, you can say that again. Honestly, I'm not like your typical teachers that some teachers that I hear, they're like, I've known from the time I was a kid, I wanted to be a teacher. It was not like that for me at all. What I loved were children. So I was a nanny for a long time. And I kind of stumbled into education because I would bring the kids that I would babysit for into schools. And then there's this particular school in Ohio, out of all places. that's a whole other story how I ended up in the United States. But I was in Columbus, Ohio as a nanny, and I went into the kids' schools, and the staff really liked me. They liked my energy and asked if I wanted to be part of the after school program. And I grew and I ended up becoming the director of the after school program. And I was like, ooh, I actually really like teaching. They asked me if I could speak Spanish, and I could. And they said that the Spanish teacher needed an assistant if I was interested. And there was an opportunity for me to basically go back to school to really learn about education. I actually wanted to be a judge. Believe it or not, Kwame, I was really bummed because growing up, I was really obsessed with American culture and hip hop culture, 90s hip hop. I told myself, I'm going to move to the United States and I'm going to become a Supreme Court judge. But then I was told I couldn't because I wasn't born in the US. I was really bummed about that. So I really wanted to be like a judge or a lawyer or something, but education is actually a different kind of advocacy that I didn't know I would be interested in. And like, what better way to contribute than contribute towards our children? That's how I got into education. It was really by luck.
All right, cool. All right, judge. I can see that. You can still make the dream happen now if you want.
I'm good. I like children. They're much more fun than adults.
Here on this podcast, we also like to talk about schooling, right? So we all went through our primary, secondary schooling growing up, and there were certain ideologies and there are certain things that we experienced that we just automatically instilled within us without even interrogating it or questioning it. So in knowing that and knowing how your upbringing was in Paris and going back to Senegal during the summertime, what were some of the struggles internally or externally, if there were any, that made it difficult for you to embrace who you truly were?
Wow, that's a deep question, Kwame. Yeah, no, it was, as you know, growing up in a different place from where your parents are from, it's always confusing at first, because as grateful as I am that I grew up in a multicultural home where several languages were spoken, that was beautiful. But it was confusing as a child because for my parents, I was becoming too white. But when I was at school, I was too African. So I really didn't know where I fit. And at some point, I think I just gave up and decided, you know what? Since no matter what I try to do to make people accept me, it doesn't matter. So might as well work on being myself. And it's been very difficult because throughout my entire upbringing, I've been oppressed, whether it was from my African immigrant family who didn't know, who thought that it was better for me to assimilate to whiteness, or from my teachers at school who couldn't really connect with me because they didn't know how to create something culturally responsive for me. So I honestly felt alone growing up. And then I picked up friendships along the way that kind of helped me grow. But yeah, no, it was, I didn't fit anywhere. And I'm actually okay with that. I was just my own person. But what I do remember was really being against injustice. I often hung out with the kids who were either being bullied or made fun of, and people happened to be scared of me at school for whatever reason, probably because always had questions or smart retorts. So I liked hanging out with the kids who were really down to earth, and that's where I felt like just the kids who could question the philosopher, especially in France. We had philosophy class all the time, so I like to hang out with the kids who talk philosophy.
And that gene of speaking out, how did that sit with your parents? And I'm only asking this because I also have Ghanaian parents, and we know that there's a certain level of deference that they exhibit when it comes to authority, even if they may not agree with what's going on around them. Mm-hmm. They internalize it and then they just go with the flow. So,
absolutely.
So I'm wondering if you being vocal about injustice caused any friction, or was it something that they always supported, your parents?
Oh, yeah. I get in trouble all the time for asking too many questions. And my mom used to say, nobody will ever kidnap you because you talk too much. You ask too many questions. It was a compliment to me. I mean, I was like, yeah, of course I'm asking questions. What's wrong with that? But I think my parents did the best they could. I think they really wanted the best for me. That's why also that was another reason why they moved to France. They wanted to make sure that I had all the opportunities, and I appreciate that. I think they didn't know that by asking me to assimilate or asking me to always navigate whiteness in their way, which was placating it, they felt that would be beneficial for me, right? I mean, what it brought me is that I learned how to code switch. Because of that, I understand European whiteness, I will say. I don't necessarily understand American whiteness as well, but I understand European whiteness very well, thanks to my parents, because they They basically told me how I should act and what they might think about people who look like us. It was also, I also at the same time felt stripped of my identity because I didn't feel like I could be myself anywhere I was. That's why I loved going to Senegal every summer, because it was like respite. It was, I could breathe finally. From July to September, I was around my people, and that was really, really incredible. And I would never change my experience for anything in the world, because I think that's what made me culturally competent. I have the best of French culture, the best of American culture, the best of Senegalese culture, and I feel like I created a hodgepodge of just being an internationally minded citizen, really. I'm grateful for that.
And this is a perfect segue because you're starting to tap into your cultural wealth as a human. And I know here at AIELOC, you and Nayung, shout out to Nayung, you all do an awesome job just talking about the importance of community cultural wealth as it pertains to our international school communities. I actually have done some episodes on this with other guests where we go into Dr. Terioso's work and the importance of understanding the funds of knowledge that we all possess that allow us to navigate different spaces that we find ourselves in as marginalized people. So, in saying that, I want to allow the viewers and listeners to understand, like, how does our community cultural wealth, the one that we possess as people, help us in combating the isms that we know occur within our international school ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a deep, deep question. I'm going to quote Nayong Kim Weaver by saying, "One relationship at a time." She always says that. And I think one of the things that helped me particularly kind of uncover my cultural wealth was actually Kevin Simpson, the founder of AIELOC. He's so skilled at modeling what it looks like to create and build relationship and build community, and how to utilize your cultural wealth to enrich that. So I want to just take a moment to thank him and everybody at AIELOC. I'm still, one of the things about being a African immigrant growing up in the West is there are a lot of things that I still have to unlearn. I'm aware, thanks to, people like you, like Nayong and the fellows and everybody at AIELOC who believe in me. Like, I can tell that I have things to bring to the table. It's just that I'm so entrenched in the things that I want to unlearn and the things that I've internalized growing up in white spaces. So I'm still uncovering a lot of my cultural wealth. I think my linguistic wealth is very well entrenched, speaking 4 languages, which is incredible when it comes to communication and making connection with people. And then just here currently in the school I am in, where I'm trying to utilize my social and family wealth and understand the most marginalized in our community. So, the local staff and the struggle they go through and they love about the school and about their job. So I think being able to be around that, I'm very privileged to be able to witness that using my cultural wealth and connecting to the population, to the host country's population. So,
and then I think one thing that a lot of international educators of color possess is navigational capital. That's something that is major. Like being able to find ways to survive and still do what we need to do in white dominant spaces. I mean, it's a lot of work, it's a skill, but it's also very tiring because there are days where you don't feel like code switching. You don't feel like having to adhere to certain principles that don't align with you. So I don't know what your thoughts are about that, because I know that's a struggle.
Yeah, that is a struggle. And thank you for bringing that up, because I truly admire someone like Nayong. I can see how Nayong, her navigational wealth is strengthening every day that we work together. And I'm not comparing myself to her, but I'm just reflecting on every time I watch her and I see her, I realize how immature I can be sometimes with my own navigational wealth, right? I think it's better than most people because of all the places I have to live in. There's certain things that I have to think about. I wonder, it's worth navigating certain spaces. There's so much work you can try to do and convince people of your humanity. And I really don't want to do that anymore. So I think one of the things that I started to do is really focus on the joy that's within my school. So I focus on the students or the educators who are like-minded or who have similar values or who believe in progressive education. I tend to stay away from those who are performative. And I think that's what my navigational wealth has brought me. It's allowed me to have this lens of being able to see people who are performing the work. And I'm really grateful for that, because I think if I hadn't grown up in a multicultural setting, I don't think I would be able to see it. I don't think I would be able to see right through people who perform the work we're trying to do in our schools.
And we've been talking about AIELOC, but I want to get to how you even came to know about AIELOC. And you did mention Kevin, who's been
Yeah.
on the podcast. So shout out to Kevin, who is just an inspiration to everybody, including myself. So let's get the timeline together. So let's start with the first part, because this is a multi-part question. When and how did you cross paths with AIELOC? Let's start there.
Kwame, you're trying to make me go way back. It feels like I've been with AIELOC for a long time, but it's only been 3 years actually. And it was right around the time I was working with Nayang. Sorry, I feel like I've been talking about her the entire time. But Nayang and I were in a school together, and some horrific things happened there to us and to some of our students. And as we were trying to advocate, we really didn't know who to turn to, and it was first international school for both of us working in, sorry. So it was my first international school working in. When everything went down at that particular school, we didn't know who to turn to. And AIELOC had this, had the November virtual conference that they have, right? The Women of Color conference in AIELOC. So that was my first encounter with AIELOC. And then we started meeting with Kevin, and Kevin asked us if we would be interested in being fellows. I mean, it all happened so quickly. But one thing I want to say about the way I stumbled upon AIELOC is, honestly, AIELOC came at a time when I really didn't believe in myself. Like, Nayang and I were ready to give up. I know I was ready to give up. I'm like, we can't work in environments like this. And having an AIELOC taught us that community is extremely important. Being around like-minded educators is really important. And I think that's really what saved us.
So this season, Identity Talk for Educators Live will be including ad spots for businesses, products, and events that are adding significant value to their communities. And here's the catch. You don't have to be an educator or an education-based business to be a part of this. We're looking for people who are just doing great work in the community. We want to use our platform as a way to amplify their work. So if you are an entrepreneur or you know of an entrepreneur who is doing just that, bring them in our direction. Have them reach out to us. If they want to learn more about their ad spots and how they can get themselves promoted on this platform, they can contact myself, Kwame at IdentityTalk4Educators.com. I'll say it one more time. It is Kwame at IdentityTalk4Educators.com. Hope to hear from you. And let's keep on amplifying our work and building each other up. That's the community.
The community, yeah, big time. So yeah, and then the second part of your question was,
how has AIELOC shaped your development as an educator?
Oh man, Kwame, I don't even know where to start, because I didn't realize, seriously, like the growth that I've had in 3 years has been because of AIELOC. I feel like it's been a span of 10 years, but it was evolution that happened within 3. But it was like just the research, the learning, the community visioning, the opportunities like the fellows program, the DIJ course now that AIELOC has with SUNY, all these the affinity group, Kevin and his leadership team being the kind of human beings who just embrace and who want people to be themselves. And so when they don't see something in the ecosystem, they create it, or they empower the AIELOC community to create it for themselves. That I think is beautiful. I've learned so much as an educator just with watching Kevin model for us. So yeah, no, it's been quite the ride. I'm just beyond grateful for everybody I've encountered throughout this experience.
Yeah, and I think that's what I've experienced being with AIELOC. I feel like I've learned so much, not just about international schools, but about the power of people, the power of cross-racial solidarity, cross-ethnic solidarity.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like AIELOC embodies it maybe more than any other organization I've been a part of in my time as an educator. And I'm not just speaking hyperbole. I truly believe that it's what gets me excited about wanting to go to a community visioning, to just be in a virtual or physical space where it's just us just kicking it, just talking, because I always know that I'm going to leave from the conversation with something new that I didn't know prior to entering. I always know. And that's what always keeps me excited about anything that has AIELOC's name on it.
Yes. Oh, preach. Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. Add to that the evolution of me as a human being as well is what I've seen, right? I think that's huge. As an educator, being in a space where someone just embraces who you are exactly for who you are, and they actually expect that. They expect you to bring in your humanity. So I think one of the things that AIELOC has done is help me understand my resilience, help me understand my value as a human being, just help me embrace all aspects of my identity. That I'm seeing that flourishing into my classroom with my students. This is like, AIELOC is beyond a professional development. It's just life. I feel like I'm experiencing life with AIELOC every time I'm there because I bring it into my classroom every day and I see how it impacts my students. So,
and honestly, I've seen the growth in you as well. I mean, as somebody who welcomed me in, like, she's really about AIELOC. Now, this is before I knew about all the insecurities that you were holding inside, but you never really expressed that outwardly to people because you had a good poker face. Like, I had no idea. I had no idea. I just like the fact that you're growing more and more confident and you're standing on principles that you believe in more boldly than when I first came into AIELOC. And that's something that I've seen you and Nayung do, because believe it or not, y'all, they don't really like to be in camera like this. This is very abnormal, very abnormal. They're very much behind the scenes people that just want to do the work. They don't want to take the credit. They just want to just keep toiling and working away while other people are in the spotlight or in the forefront. That's just who Rama and Nayung are. To see you, even talking to you right now in this platform, I'm not gonna lie to you, I never thought that would even happen, because you're not
really?
I'm being honest. But that's growth.
I'm just hiding. Sorry.
I think it's important for people to just listen to people's stories, because you might think, oh, that's just how I grew up and that's just how I've experienced things. But what people don't realize is there are certain elements of people's stories that they either relate to or that might provide answers to issues that they've experienced. It may have answers to certain trauma that they've experienced in their life. But because they've listened to somebody's story, now they have some kind of antidote that's going to allow them to resolve their issues. I think that's why we talk so much in AIELOC about storytelling, the power of just people's stories and their accounts of their life experiences, and how that allows us to just transform our practice, but also just transform the way that we interact with the world. I know you're not a parent. I mean, I have two young boys, and there are times where AIELOC somehow manifests itself in the form of just how I communicate with them, in the form of how I interact with my wife, in the form of how I interact with people in different spaces I'm in. You start to see evidence of that throughout your daily routine. So
I agree. Thank you for that. On a side note, I'm here because you're rather special, Kwame. That's why I wouldn't do this for just everybody.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Your mention about just life as an African educator in an international school. Now that's real. And there are nuances and there are certain elements of that experience that people will never understand. Never. I'm curious to know what that's been like for you, because I know about the backstory. We're not going to get into all the details because we're not going to relive any trauma here, but we're going to try to keep it as much of a Cliff Notes version as possible for our audience. But what has that experience been like, being an African educator, working in international schools?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy because I think the biggest problem that I have is that international school system has a lot of problematic things going on. I mean, like the article an article, Bloomberg, I think, wrote an article. There's a racism problem in international schools. It's still very prevalent, and I see it every day. I see it every day where I am. And I think I get the brunt of it because the people who are in power expect me to fit in a box and I don't. So it's very difficult for them to navigate me, and that makes them uncomfortable. So because of that, every day I show up as my full self. That's their kryptonite. And I'm not doing it because it's their kryptonite. I'm doing it because that's what the kids deserve. But it's hard. It takes a lot of therapy. It takes a lot of self-reflection, a lot of reading, community like AIELOC. It takes a lot of inner work to be able to be in these spaces and to be able to be present for the students because they deserve the best. I think for me, the biggest part is the performative aspect of it all. All these schools pretending that they're doing the work instead of just really acknowledging that it's okay, that if they're not as far along as they are, that's what we are here for. As a community of educators, we're here to kind of figure it out together. So we talk a lot about IB and the framework and international mindedness, but many of us don't know what that means because many of us have not done identity work. Many of us have not self-reflected on our whiteness or our internalized oppression or who we are as BIPOC. Currently, what's being perpetuated is still the dominant Western culture in international schools. So as an African educator, I'm not allowed to be an African educator. You can be African, but as long as I'm comfortable with your way of showing up as African. As a white person, if I'm not comfortable with your way of showing up as African, we don't want that in our school. So navigating that every day is hard. That's why I focus on the students because there's so much more acceptance. That's where the joy is. And they love me for who I am. And like that's something that I'm just so grateful for.
And in your opinion, what do you believe is the future of international schools as we see them? We know the work we're trying to do through AIELOC, but there are still many competing forces that are getting in the way of what we're trying to do through our mission. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, the international schools, as we know it right now, they're not going to flourish towards what I think the students need if they continue to not retain revolutionary educators like us. And I'm being very blunt. That might sound snobbish, but it's true. My mere existence is revolutionary because many of those people in power don't believe that someone like me has a space in leadership. They don't believe that someone like actually cut out to basically have the vision for the school. Many of these leaders don't want. They're so insecure that it's difficult for them to see a Black African woman actually having thoughts and ideas about how the future of education can really impact these kids who are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. I think if the international school ecosystem continue to ride this performative of DEIJ, it's going to crumble. It's all going to unveil itself. It's not sustainable. I think the best thing they can do is acknowledge what's happening and find a way to retain people like us who are trying to do the work so that these students have the best experience that they should have. I don't know if that's going to happen because power and privilege is really what people care about. And I feel like right now what's happening is a lot of people in power are using identity as a distraction so that we don't talk about the real issue, which is the financial inequities that are taking place. The fact that the local staff is not being paid a living wage. And that's everywhere, whether it's in Asia or in Africa or it's Latin America. And we have these neo-colonialist laces being cultivated and pretending that we do in DIJ work because our leadership is diverse visibly. But people don't understand that diversity of thought also matters. People don't understand that diversity in culture, in the way you experience the world also matter. Different ways of knowing, doing, understanding. So when you do not center your host culture's people, then I don't think that you are aiming for justice. I think you're just aiming for performance.
Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to that, just understanding that we have to flip the script and get the educators who are in these countries to realize you'll have more power than you believe you do. So there's a mindset shift that has to take place. And this is something that we've had countless conversations about. But in terms of how to shift the mindset, it's going to require us to look into recruitment practices.
Yeah.
It require us to look into these different agencies who play a role in placing expat educators into these different schools.
Mm-hmm.
We have to also look at the leadership structure within these international schools, looking at our heads of schools, looking at even some of the schools that have boards that play a prominent role in maintaining this white dominant power structure. There's a lot there that we have to unpack and really dismantle. So it's easier said than done, but we're going to keep on kicking and punching. I know that for a fact.
Exactly. We are here to stay. I'm very confused about what's happening in the international school world. I don't understand how someone can have a mission and vision be so different from their action. It's still very baffling to me. I don't get it. Yeah, I don't know. Practicing what you preach is not something that's easy for leaders in international schools. And I think it comes back to what you said. We don't have a diverse group of head of schools. We don't have a diverse group of leaders in general in the international school ecosystem. And there's a certain, there needs to be a paradigm shift. I agree. But I don't know what that would look like and if they're ready for it.
That's
They're
always
not
the
ready
question.
for it.
I don't think so. They don't want the smoke. They definitely don't want the smoke.
Nope, absolutely not.
All right. So we're gonna wind down. We got a couple more questions before we get you out of here. I know that we're kind of in the same boat professionally in terms of just figuring out, man, like what's the next move? Where do we go next? There's so many things we're interested in, so many things that we want to do to make our schools better internationally, but we can't do it all. So I'm wondering, as we sit here today having conversations, what do you believe the future holds for you?
Wow.
Let's radically dream for a second. We're
Yes,
dreaming.
radically dream. I like that. This question makes me feel very special. Thank you. Thank you for believing that I have a good future ahead of me. I think so too. One of my New Year resolutions this year was to just be. And it's hard enough to do that, right? And I think in order to do that, I need to be present. And so I'm cultivating being present in every moment that I am. So right now, there's a lot of difficult things that are going on in my school, a lot of unfair things that are happening that I'm dealing with. And I'm so proud of all the inner work that I've done because I'm actually not taking the situation personally. I'm looking at it as an opportunity for growth. So what I'm trying to do is really ride the experience, and as difficult and as painful as it is at times, I'm also finding ways to implement joy within it. It's almost like it's a test. Like the universe kind of dropped all this stuff around me and they're like, okay, now, Rama, where are you going to find the joy? Here's your test. You've been learning for 3 years and Goldie Mohammed has been helping you unearth the joy, right? So how are you through this experience? And I think that's my goal for the next few months. Yeah, I think that's my goal for the next few months. I just want to be able to just cultivate the joy within me. Yeah, I want to cultivate the joy within me so I can better cultivate the joy in my learners. And I think if I get through this test in the next few months, I feel like the future is going to be nothing but bright.
There you go. Manifestation. I love it. And one last question. How do you stay true to the teacher in you?
I meditate. I have a meditation coach, Jessica Kaylee from the Lotus Pond, who just guides me through all the pain, and she leads me to my endarkenment so that I can evolve as a human being. And she helps me find the humanity in me. And so if you haven't checked out the Lotus Pond as a meditation coach, I highly recommend her, Jessica Kaylee. She's the reason why I'm staying true to the teacher in me. And of course, all of the people at AIELOC who help me stay grounded in the work that I do, who embraced me with all my imperfections and all my mistakes, and who just to do better. Yeah, just continuing to work with AIELOC and just surrounding myself with good souls is what helped me stay true to the teacher in me.
I love that answer. I love it. And usually I would ask my guests before they leave to just drop their socials and everything, but I know you don't do social media, so we can bypass the question. But here's the audible. Rather than share that information, I'd love for you to just share with people, particularly those who may be in an international teaching space, why they should be members of AIELOC.
That's easy.
So elevator pitch.
Yes, community, community, community. That's why AIELOC is a space where you can be your true self. AIELOC is a space that will embrace you, that will help you evolve, that will help you with research, that will allow community intellectual engagement with like-minded educators. I mean, AIELOC really is, to me, the way to a more humane pedagogy, because that's what the team and the community really embody every day. Become an AIELOC member. Absolutely. It will change your life.
Y'all heard it. Y'all heard it from me. Become AIELOC members. It will change your life. You will not regret it. You will thank us. So that's how we going to end it. Thank you again for taking time to talk with us. They're gonna go back into your cave now.
Thank you. Thank
And
you so much, Kwame.
just hibernate until the next time.
It sounds good. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm so, so excited. Thank you. I feel very special today. I appreciate you.
Yes. All right, friend. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
All right. All right, y'all. So we are about to end another episode of IDTALK. And as always, I wish you all good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to do this again another time. Peace out, everybody.